Hey everybody, welcome to Fuelcast TV right here on Locals. This is our channel where we like to talk about everything freedom, unity, entertainment, and liberty, all encompassed into a bunch of different stuff that we like to do. Podcasts, interviews, we do festivals, all kinds of stuff right here. You get exclusive content access, first reach to tickets, merchandise, all kinds of stuff, behind the scenes footage to our docu-series about the Iron Pig and the lawsuit and the shutdowns, all kinds of interesting stuff that you get exclusive access to by subscribing for $5 a month right now. Click that button below. We'll see you soon. All right, welcome to a special edition of Fuelcast TV. Here we talk about everything freedom, unity, entertainment, and liberty. I am joined by Christine Geiger. If you haven't been following what's going on with a few things on the interwebs, Christine is the owner of Studio 8 Hair Lab in Traverse City, Michigan. And last week, she took to Facebook to express some concerns. Thank you for taking the time to come all the way over from Traverse City to come in today. I know people are clamoring to talk to you, so I greatly appreciate you coming on our silly little podcast here.
Locals have to stick together.
Twitter Spaces as well, so a big shout out to everybody that's listening in on Twitter Space right now. Let's get right into it. 2 weeks ago, the 11th, July 11th, something
Friday,
like that?
and actually, I think it was Friday the 7th.
Okay. You took to your business page and expressed some concerns of yours.
Yes.
And you have received quite the backlash for doing so. And if people are wondering why I would invite somebody like Christine on that has nothing to do with what we do, a couple of things. I'm fascinated by the social media frenzy that this has created. Unfortunately for you, I don't think this is necessarily what you intended.
No.
It's an interesting convergence between what's happening with the trans movement in our country, in Michigan, in Otsego County, over in Traverse City, of course. These are big issues that are coming to the forefront. We've had some discussions recently about our school board here in Gaylord hiring a trans individual for the kindergarten. So these are some things that we have talked about before a little bit. Firstly, we discussed the Dylan Mulvaney issue with Bud Light and some of that, and that has really sparked the trans conversation, whether it be good or whether it be bad. But this is a big part of what you have come out on social media and said, that a certain portion of the LGBTQ plus community is, I wouldn't say welcome, but you're basically saying, I mean, I'll let you in your own words.
Well, I have been watching what's been happening in our society for several years now. I have had some firsthand experience with it and speaking with some people that I know that are dealing with this issue very personally in their life. It's become very clear that this has been a movement that was slow starting, but it was taking hold right underneath of our noses, so to speak. Many parents had no idea that these agendas and these types of things were being pushed by the schools and the teachers. And the worst part of it is there was an agenda in place to keep it a secret from the parents and from the general public. And so I finally got to the point where I just had enough. And when a client brought into me a printout of the proposed House bill in Michigan 4474, and what that all entails, reading that article, I just saw red. I thought, this is it. I've had enough. I am taking a stand. And what I posted is nothing that I hadn't said several times before. But I just chose to put it in a post on that particular Friday. I posted it in the morning, mid-morning, and didn't really have any backlash or any issues with it. Didn't realize what this had sparked until Saturday afternoon. So just about 24 hours later, is when I started getting my first notifications on Facebook that this was like really making some people upset. Initially, I communicated back and forth with them, and I would, respond to their comments
Mhm.
and try to,
Which sometimes
yeah,
can be
which
good and
is
sometimes can
exactly,
be bad.
exactly, and what it really showed me was that this was starting to take on a life of its own. That all of the individuals that I was dealing with, that not all of them appeared to have um, the healthiest outlook in life.
Mm.
Um, and I just, there was times in my head I thought, gosh, like maybe I should issue an apology, or maybe I should, say I shouldn't have posted it. But every time I started to have those feelings of doubt or those thoughts of doubt, there'd be another voice in my head that said, no, like it is time for somebody to state this and to stand behind it, because you have just stated what a lot of people have been feeling and thinking. Now, they may not have worded it the way I did, but the general consensus is there.
And do you think so? If I'm to understand correctly, right? Nobody came into your shop and requested a particular kind of haircut that may resemble. I joked before about somebody, Darren coming in. If you watch this podcast before, Darren is a pretty specific name, but um, an individual comes in and requests an animal style hair. Like this never happened. You haven't turned away
No,
service from anybody for
no.
anything. None
In
of
fact,
that.
actually, I have actually performed services where somebody had requested that type of haircut. There's two haircuts that have been trending in the last couple, let's say the last 2 years ish. And one has been referred to as the butterfly cut,
Hmm.
and the other one has been referred to as the wolf haircut. Both of those are animals, and I've never had any issue performing those services or creating those looks. In fact, artistically, I could appreciate the butterfly. I mean, if any hairstylist that's watching or anyone that is into fashion and so forth, just the way that the layers come back with the hair, it looks like butterfly wings, and it's so there's a difference between creative expression and description and describing something creatively versus having someone come in and tell you that they want you to use the him, they, her, theirs, hers, was.
And that's really what you're taking issue with, right? And I think when I first saw this, 'cause we have a mutual friend that put us in connection with each other, and she shared your Facebook post with me whenever it was, Friday, Saturday, and said, this is blowing up. When I first read it, I knew what you were trying to say.
Right.
Um, I think that you probably would agree, but when I read it, the last sentence about the pet groomer portion of it, I think was what people really started to hone on.
Yeah.
Those that were really upset the most
Uh-huh.
honed in on that and turned the conversation. I don't think there was much of a
Not
conversation
really.
as it sounds. And I can sort of relate to some of this as it happened to me and the Iron Pig. I was doxxed on Thanksgiving just for merely keeping my restaurant open. Um, this is a larger kind of societal issue. I'm always talking about removing the emotion from a lot of these things,
Yeah.
and look at them from that point of view, not so much the emotional aspect of it, because that's really what it gets dialed. That's what happened with us and the COVID stuff. How dare you keep your restaurant? How dare you endanger your own community? I'm doing my part. Why aren't you doing yours? And I sort of, as it unfolded over 48 hours, 72 hours, and the headlines started coming out, it was all kind of the same narrative.
Mhm.
And I'm always interested in what really is going on. I don't believe for a moment that. How long have you been in business?
The Studio 8 Hair Lab has existed since January of 2020. I have been a in this industry as a hairstylist since 2004,
So
so about
you
19
fair to say
years.
you've been doing this
Like
A long
almost
time.
20, yeah, almost 20
Fair
years.
to say you know your customer base pretty well.
If I didn't before, I certainly did 2020 going forward.
Sure. Why do you say that?
I think 2020 just gave us all the opportunity to really like remove the veils
Mm.
of where we stood, not just 2020, but even leading up to 2020. It was a big shock to the world when Donald Trump became president. And I think during that elections period, we really started to kind of draw that line in the sand amongst relationships and people. I mean, there were people that you had no idea where they stood politically. And sometimes I think that's because they just checked out. But there are those that adhered to the, basic principles that, of old school principles of where, there's certain things you don't talk about. You don't talk about what goes on in your bedroom. You don't talk about what your W-2 says, and you don't talk about your politics. Though, and you also don't share too much about your health. So those 4 things, those were pretty standard in our society, as we were growing up. I think we're
I
probably in
would
the
I would
same
agree with
age
that.
range.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden we started to see those things just get chipped away, and people started talking about how much money they made. And then, they would talk about health issues here and there and politics. And so after 2020, I think became a lot clearer on, who stood where.
Um, I would have to echo that sentiment. I have lost many of friends, gained many more,
Same.
and maybe even more quality
Yeah.
relationships. And that's not to denigrate my friends that aren't my friends anymore. We just have different values.
Yeah.
Um, and like you're saying, I feel like we used to not know so many of those things, so they weren't such a sticking point. Uh, but part of it is being able to have conversation and also being able to disagree.
Exactly.
We have to get back to that point where just because I disagree with you doesn't mean I don't like you.
Right.
Um, with your Facebook post, the one part if I were disagreeing, the one part I really disagree with would have been the way that the pet
Yeah.
portion was worded.
That's
Only because it
it's
gives
polarizing. Yeah.
your yes. And for anybody that is looking for a snippet to run with and make you look like a person that they are, the caricature of you, if
Hmm.
you will. I don't know you that well.
Right.
We just met, so I think your intentions are pure. We have the same friends, so I understand your position. I understand your religious beliefs. I also understand freedom of speech, and that does mean enduring speech that you don't like. But it doesn't mean that you're free to use speech that's going to harm somebody, right?
Right.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater.
Exactly.
Guy who was it? Steve Martin had a great joke, and I'm stealing this from my attorney because we were talking about it yesterday. But Steve Martin had a really funny joke where he says you can't yell movie in a crowded fire department or something like that,
Right.
firehouse.
Right.
Um, but anyway, that's part of why I wanted to have you on is to have a discussion about this and maybe bring things around to where we can sit down and understand the differences. There are people that are always going to disagree with Christine. There's always going to be people that are going to disagree with me. And I'm okay with that.
Hmm.
I've spent the last 3 years dealing with that
Yeah.
sort of thing. But I do find it interesting those that aren't able to have a conversation or a discussion around emotionally charged topics like the one we're discussing
Right.
today um, doesn't help. When you start to ratchet up the rhetoric, it comes to a point where it does no good.
Right.
And all they're trying to do, it seems like from the sidelines, that they don't really want Christine's opinion out there. They just want the characterization of your comments to be the sticking point. Um, and I think it's important to have these discussions with people that think opposite. Now, you and I may think the same in I am a free speech person. I'm libertarian. So I'm going to sit here and say, you have the right to self identify however you want.
Right.
But Dave Chappelle put it best, at what level do I have to participate in your self esteem? And I think that's kind of what I'm getting from you is that if there's certain individuals that need others to participate in their self-esteem at such a level that they're welcome to go somewhere else.
Absolutely. That's exactly the motivation for how I feel the way I do. I understand that when people take the time to get their hair cut or get their hair done, um, they're taking time out of their day, they're spending money to do it. They should be able to come into a space where it caters to what they want.
Hmm.
And I also, though, as a business owner, which you're self-employed as well, there's a lot of things about being self-employed that are very difficult.
Hmm.
One of the things that makes it tolerable, kind of like a perk of it, is trying to surround yourself with work that inspires you, work that you enjoy, and people that you enjoy. And so I just, life is too short
Hmm.
to go into work and think, I'm just not dealing with this. I just refuse to work that way. And by the same token, I don't want someone to come into my space and leave feeling like, man, that was a letdown because she didn't do this or she didn't do that. I'm telling you up front, I'm not going to do it. So go somewhere else if that's what you're looking for.
So, to be specific, you have no problems with lesbians,
Nope,
gays,
nope,
bisexuals.
nope.
It's the others that you're taking issue with,
Well, I mean,
more or less.
I guess I mean, you could definitely say yes because I've actually gone on record to say yeah, I have a problem with the TQ plus. However, I understand that sometimes people have to take drastic measures in order to be happy with their existence, and that's a personal decision on their part. I feel very bad that they have to make that struggle, just like we and the heterosexual land have to make the hard decisions and have challenges in our own lives.
Hmm.
But what I have a problem with is forcing the rest of the world to validate it, or it's your own business. I don't want any part of it. Um, and bringing it into the schools and influencing the children. I just see where children's childhoods are being wiped away with forcing them to have to learn about, discuss, and think about issues that are just too advanced for their maturity level. But with that said, every parent has the right to determine what and when is right for their own child. And that's something else I have an issue with because I feel like the medical community and the educational part of our society, they are trampling all over parents' rights. They are basically looking at us and saying, okay, you birthed it, now give it over to us. And that's what I have such a hard time with.
There's another correlation and another reason why I wanted to have this discussion with you is about peer pressure. Whether it's coming from, in my case, some of my family members, um, the community at large, physical community, um, as well as judges, police, agencies from the state that came after me. Again, you have committed no crime
Doesn't feel
that they can pin on you.
right, right.
And but some people do believe that you have committed a crime.
Yes, they do.
And I think that is another reason that this discussion is important. Again, whether or not you agree with Christine or not is not necessarily the point here.
Right.
It's about having this discussion as it relates to laws that are looking to be implemented in Michigan, hate crime language. What is a hate crime? What is harassment? A lot of these things are being looked at. I don't I'm digging into that
Mm.
that bill a little bit more and more every day. I read plenty about it. I've had some discussions on our radio show about it, and nowhere in there does it say misgendering or something like that.
Right.
So to me, it sounds like it's a little bit of as far as the way that one party is portraying legislation sounds like the don't say gay bill, which never said the word gay, the Florida bill. And I think that was passed in
I
Florida.
think so.
I don't
Yes,
remember
I think
this,
it was.
but this is House Bill
Four four seven
4474.
four.
And thank you, because I always get my
I
numbers mixed up with all these other legal proceedings going on.
the first time I posted it, I had it the numbers transpired incorrectly. I
Yeah,
had it 4744, and, so I did go back and I corrected it, and but unfortunately, some of the screen shares or whatnot out there may have the wrong, number, but that was corrected.
yeah, and I think everybody
I think they
probably has a
figured it
pretty good
out,
idea
yeah,
of what
they
of what
figured
it
it
is
out.
that you're referring to. I'm curious about, so what you've gone through is interesting. Um, what seems to be happening, right? So there's this peer pressure, and then there's part of this peer pressure is pure hate, pure hatred.
Yeah.
I think I've seen some photos. Some folks were protesting or picketing out front
Mhm.
of the salon.
There's been 2 now,
Okay.
and only 1 was covered, and
Is
that's
there
that.
any time during this, and I'm not going to portray you as a victim.
I don't feel like a victim.
Okay, good. I have never once felt like the victim in my circumstance, because I chose. I made the decisions to keep the restaurant open. I made the decision to challenge the liquor commission and challenge the health department and all these other ding dongs. Um, I'm curious at what you have to say with regards to harassment, and hate language when you make a comment like you did, juxtapose that with what flooded your inbox, whether it was Twitter or Facebook or Insta or Rumble or whatever happened, private messages, DMs. I mean, I had people getting a hold of my personal cell phone
Mhm.
number. I got doxxed on Thanksgiving. I'm curious about your thoughts on the new House bill hate crime language and what you have said, asserting your free speech, and what I would have to assume would be a portion of freedom of religion.
Mhm.
Um, this new hate crime language bill, whatever the hell we're calling it, um, don't misgender me bill, um, I think has some good intentions, but that doesn't mean that it's good law.
No.
Uh, there are people that do need protections. There are a lot of crazy people out there.
Yeah.
I'm not under the impression that you're one of them. Um, but have you received any kind of harassment or any kind of threats or any of that? I mean, have you had to, get out of town, for example, or any of that kind
No,
of
but
stuff?
I almost did. I
Yeah.
almost did because it was getting to the point where the threats were so great, the threats against my children. Um, my husband has a, job, in, the surrounding community of Traverse City, and, he was receiving harassment at his work. They were targeting his company's Facebook page. They were unleashing everything on him that they had been doing to me, but mine just started immediately. But since I am an independent stylist that I work by appointment only, I'm not, my business really isn't open for walk-ins, for that type of thing. So a lot of these people were frustrated because they really weren't getting the responses or the satisfaction, out of targeting me. So then they moved to him. And his became so bad that on Wednesday last week, he had received a threatening message, in regards to our little boys. We have a 6-year-old little boy, a 8-year-old, and then we have a, daughter who will be 24 on Friday this week. And, he was receiving threats against, in regards to the boys. And so he took those very seriously. He left work immediately and he went directly to the sheriff's department. He, filed his complaint, and then he went and picked up the boys, and he never left them again. until today. Today is actually the first day that he's gone back to work. His employer contacted him last night and said, "We need you to come back. We think it's okay. Could you please come back?" And he never wanted to leave in the first place, but it was done to try to help protect that business from having, if he wasn't there, then maybe they wouldn't be getting as targeted
Mhm.
as they were. So this, I talked to him midday today, and he said things seem to be going okay.
How do you reconcile one thing you're making a comment about, as you said, basically is because of this bill. You've had enough,
Yeah.
right? So that was the impetus of you typing out
Mhm.
the Facebook page. That was one of the biggest questions that I had for you was
What made
what
this happen?
what what triggered you to do, because again, going back to my personal experience with this crazy sort of thing was I had just been pushed to the edge enough and was deciding to do something, and I was like, nope. And I actually gave the authorities a heads up, um, which in hindsight, didn't really make a difference anyway. But I find it interesting that a community um, has rallied around the idea of disliking you, hating you, um, calling you a bigot, whatever it is. Um, in their own justification, in their
Yeah.
own
When
whatever way.
people are hurt, they lash out.
Right. I always talk about, the dynamic of love and fear, and, it's not love and hate. Hate's a byproduct of fear.
Right.
So what are these individuals afraid of? And I suppose the same thing could be posited to you. What are you afraid of if you were afraid of any of these things? And I think, um, when we discussed earlier off camera, and I'm not trying to lead you
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
any means, but you've said that your faith is a driving force behind part of this. I just find it very interesting that you've made a comment re- revolving around a bill that involves harassment um, and hate crimes. Now, these are specific protections for certain communities that go above and beyond what a regular crime would be. That's
Mhm.
the point of a hate crime, right? You commit a crime against an elderly person, that is going to be an exponentially greater punishment than uh, just an ordinary person, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, so I find it fascinating that these individuals, rightfully or wrongfully, however you feel about it, is attacking you and harassing you without ever having really any understanding other than a few of your words from the internet. Um, I find that fascinating.
So do I.
This whole bill, this whole thing.
It's almost ironic.
It's very ironic, and it kind of flies in the face of logic to me.
Mhm.
I always make the joke, "Make logic great again." Not particularly a big Trump fan, but that nomenclature is out there
Yeah.
and it's going to stay out there for a while.
Right.
But we need to kind of move back to logic a little bit. Um, but going back to this peer pressure thing, so the House bill that is being considered creates an enormous amount of pressure downwards on anybody that might say something like this.
Mhm.
Um, and therefore, sort of a self fulfilling prophecy, I think, because many are now saying, see, this is why we need this, is because of
Right.
people like Christine. Again, you've harmed nobody. Um, so I can't remember if it was Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle. It might have been Chris Rock. Who said, words hurt when you write them on a brick and you throw it.
Right.
That's where I'm at. Again, I'm libertarian. I feel to each their own. Stay out of each other's business. But the peer pressure has so many aspects to it.
Oh, absolutely.
And you shared with me a letter from the city of Traverse City,
Mhm.
and I was kind of taken back by it a little bit. They're proposing that you may have violated some local ordinances and discriminating or something like that, but yet they didn't cite any of the actual ordinances. Is that correct?
That's correct. As of yet, they have not.
Did they? And I don't think have they. issued any sort of citation?
Not yet. I have not had communications with them yet.
Have any are you so you carry a license, correct?
For my cosmetology and my salon both.
And that's licensed through the state of Michigan
Yes, it is.
through Laura, I'm
Yeah.
guessing?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
They have not said anything about your license, have they?
Well, I haven't checked my email in the last couple of days for that. So
I
today is
will
Tuesday, so I may have something in there that I'm not aware of.
they will email you. Most likely they won't even send you certified letter. They'll send you just something in the mail if they do. I don't again, you have committed no crime. That our professionals have looked at. You haven't committed a crime. That doesn't mean that people clearly are obviously angry with you. But you have committed no crime. So here's Traverse City, where you live, where you operate your business, send you a letter. Threatening, maybe not so much threatening, but it could be perceived as a threat against your First Amendment right of free speech and your freedom of
Are you
religion.
asking what happens if they do, or are you saying that they already have? Because what they put out was a statement. It didn't come to me personally. They put that out for the entire world.
Which is also even more interesting
Hmm.
than actually sending it to you.
Yes,
Because now, to me, it looks a little bit like virtue signaling,
it does.
especially when you don't include any local ordinance in that.
Mm.
You're more interested. It looked like they were more, and I'll provide you with a copy of it. Um, they were more interested in quoting local officials
Hmm.
than they were actually telling Christine what she had done wrong. Well, you may have done this, and then well, we're looking at
Right.
the state laws and the recent Supreme Court ruling, which was the Colorado ruling, which allowed um, a website
Yes,
developer to say no to a gay couple to design their wedding.
I believe so. And then there's
Yeah.
also the cake issue. And
Yes.
with the cake issue, that one was the cake maker would not specifically make a cake for that purpose. However, if a gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, any of the people that fall under the alphabet umbrella, if they were to walk into the bakery and purchase something that was already made in the coolers, cake baker had no problem with them buying that. So
Interesting. I
so it
didn't
was
I
kind
didn't
of a
know
funny,
that
yeah.
caveat of
So it's
that.
kind of
That's
like it. So what had happened with the Supreme Court ruling just now is they've left some things that were open for interpretation, and creative expression is one of them, the religious part,
mhm.
and then something to do. I forget what the term is, but it's somebody that's very passionate about language and the whole
Hmm,
like pronoun issue. So
mhm.
there's like three things there that are left open for interpretation, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with them going forward.
It will be very interesting to see. Again, these are the intersections of freedom of religion, freedom of speech. I'm a huge First Amendment supporter,
Same.
and yeah, I always say there's a reason why it's the first one.
Exactly. It's
Um,
probably one of the most important ones.
so more about this peer pressure. Tell me about. So we were having a conversation before about the potential for fining you and for either the city or the state to be collecting fees and distributing
Yeah.
money. Tell me more about that.
I just have to question the more I read or have learned about this proposed bill and the punishments that are in place. The language in the bill very very clearly leads somebody to know that this is something that in our legal system we have our criminal our sector, and then we have our civil side, and this bill is 100% directed at the criminal side. And so I'm not an attorney. I don't pretend to have all kinds of legal information or knowledge. And this is just a simple hairdresser who read something, and I'm asking questions. Um, in my experience or what I know, just from the little bit that I do know about this, when people are in criminal court and they're assessed a fine, typically that fine goes to the county or the state.
Mhm.
That money does not go to the defense or to the plaintiff. There's something completely separate where they have the victims fund, where they will take a portion
Okay.
of these fines and they will put it into the victim funds and things. Sometimes people are ordered to pay restitution directly to the victim, but those things are completely separate from an actual being assessed a fine. And a fine can be up to $10,000. Now, I I mean, I have 164 saved images on my phone of hate that I have received. I'm saving them all. I'm logging them into a folder, and at some point they will be released because I think it is very important that that the public understand that behind the rainbows and unicorns, there's an awful lot of hate, and that is something that they try to not have be public, because when somebody is in my situation, or as was yours, or some of these other people that have spoken out, there was a gentleman, I think his business is called the Kansas Air Cedar, just outside of Kansas City. Um, he spoke out something very similar in this similar type of landscape. And, um, when this happens, it it changes everything, because that money, if I you know if I just if I think to myself that if I had 200 evidence examples of evidence of me being harassed and bullied and targeted and saying all kinds of personal things towards me, very hateful, that all seem to be what this bill is talking about,
Hmm.
what would happen if the state decided to prosecute those 200 people?
Right.
How much money would that be?
It's a lot of
That's
money.
a lot of money.
Yeah.
I wouldn't see it. You wouldn't see it.
Right.
Why does the state need to profit from this to such a great degree? Granted, it hasn't been put in place yet, but these are questions that we should all be asking.
Right. Right. And that's the bigger reason why I wanted to have a conversation with you, is because this HB 4474, I think I got it right,
Yep.
um, is not the law yet.
Right.
Um, is there a chance to keep it from becoming the law of the land? Maybe. The political environment we have in this state might make it a little bit difficult, but there needs to be a legitimate conversation around some of these things and trying to criminalize language.
Right.
I think that is such a slippery slope when you start trying to, some of the language in that bill uses words like a reasonable person. We would like to all think that we
Literally.
know what a reasonable
Right.
person is, but ultimately um, it comes down to one person's idea interpretation of what a reasonable person might be. And there's so much other language in there, but that's kind of the point. It's meandering. It's supposed to be very broad, so that way they can take and funnel it down.
Right.
We've had the same issue with the health code that we had ruled unconstitutional. It said the health director may limit the gathering of people for any reason. Holy shit, that is some very broad
Tyrannical.
language.
Yeah.
And it was at one point said it was constitutional because it contained the word epidemic in it. Well, an epidemic can be anything from childhood vaping to obesity to heart disease to one of the number one things that the CDC says is an epidemic, which is loneliness. How do you remedy loneliness? And what technically is the qualification for loneliness? How many hours are out of the day? You know what I
Exactly.
mean? So
Exactly.
there's no definition on some of these things. And this is our battle, and why we started a podcast and all this other silly stuff is to highlight these exact things and say, no, we pay our legislators good money, put the specificity in there.
Hmm.
Do it. Don't let that law leave those chambers without more specific language in them. Now, doing this with a hate crime bill where we're talking about language, to me seems a little bit redundant. Also, I have noticed in this bill that I don't think it includes, and I could be wrong, and I haven't read the thing entirely front to back a million times, but I'm pretty sure everything is already illegal that they're trying to propose in this new hate crime. Does that make sense?
You see some
There's
redundancy.
yes,
Yeah.
there's already protections. So it is very redundant.
And that's why I have to question what are their motives.
Right. And the other thing that we always talk about is, how hypocritical a lot of these things are. We discuss that when you're saying something a certain group perceives as hate, and then they turn around and say something as equally or if not more hateful. I haven't seen all of your messages, but again, I've been in your position, so I
Right. So
can
yeah, you
imagine.
can imagine.
Um,
But a
so
lot of people can't.
a lot
A
of
lot
people
of
can.
people would be shocked to see the hate that really is behind all of this.
It's incredible.
It is. It is. There is so much passion.
Mhm.
There is so much fueling it. I do not think for a minute that there aren't people that were very, very disturbed or hurt by what they read. However, to have the enormity of what I have am experiencing and how far it extends away, radiates from me, to my family members, to people that have defended me online. Um,
Your product line.
the product line,
Yeah.
the product line, the aggression and the emphasis that was directed at them was just unbelievable. I mean, I feel absolutely horrible for them. They are a small company. They have been around now for 8 years. So they definitely have crossed that point of where, businesses kind of like, yeah, they're going to make it or no, they're definitely going to make it. The product itself is the best quality product I've ever used. It's made my job so much easier in the last, 5.5 years working with this product. I get consistent results. The quality of it is superior to anything else I've ever used before. And so it is very, very sad that a company that has such a great product can still be vulnerable to this type of pressure. I mean, Jack, the CEO of the company, he's also the creator of the line. He's expressed to me that I think it was by Tuesday evening, they had received over 10,000 um, like messages, phone calls, comments. And, they have a corporate office that exists of maybe 10 or 12,
Wow.
and that includes him. He was
Mhm.
personally, I'm sure, taking some of these calls and so forth. And so for this mob to then turn and direct everything on a business that's just trying to do business, it's really unfortunate. And I can understand why they couldn't withstand the pressure or the influx or that be that they I essentially look at it as they've been bullied into severing ties with me. And they don't understand, I don't think, what is actually driving this. And I think if I didn't understand it so well myself, and because I've been awake for a long time, I've been researching, I have listened to stories like yours. I'm surprised to find myself now in this situation, but I was prepared for it. I just didn't know it was going to be this intense and that it was this well organized. I mean, my harassing calls, right now we're not receiving any calls because I have my phone on Do Not Disturb, but if I didn't have my phone on Do Not Disturb, it would be call after call after call. I do have to say for anyone that's going through this, one of the funniest things you can do, answer one call, let another call come in, and then merge them. And then sit there and look and listen to them like go back and forth with each other because they're confused and they don't know what's going on. So I've had some entertainment here. I mean, in some bright spots amongst all of this hassle and so forth. But it definitely is intense.
Do this question gets asked to me from time to time when I do some interviews. Do do you regret it? I know we're only a few
No,
days out.
no,
You no, right?
no.
Unequivocal. Good. Okay.
Because there's a lot of people out there that are gonna laugh at this or think it's just hogwash, and that's fine. That's your opinion, and then you're entitled to it. But this was something that I was very it was something that I was very moved to do.
Mhm.
There was something that was telling me to put this out, and the words just flowed, and everything just it was like I just was called. I felt like it was time. I knew that I would receive backlash. I did not expect that I would receive backlash worldwide within 12 to 16 hours of it breaking on the local media with 9 and 10. But, once something is shared to the Facebook group Overheard in Traverse City, and I'm sure every community has a group like this, it just took on a life of its own. And local media people and probably national media as well, they pay attention to those groups. Where do you think they get their content? Or they find out about leads for different stories and so forth. And so once the TV 9 and 10 decided to cover this story, and then they put it out there, it went worldwide fast. And it shouldn't have done that. Like, it should not have done that organically. Now, I do understand that we have social media and so forth, but there is
Sure.
definitely something driving this. This is a very well oiled machine. This is very well organized, and I do believe that there are people out there that are targeting me and targeting the color brand and other people associated in anything like this. There are people out there working this as a job, because my phone is quiet from around 8:30, 9 o'clock until about 7 o'clock in the morning. And then from about 7 a.m. to about 8:30, 8 p.m., 8:30 p.m., it is nonstop. These people are doing it like it is their job. And I almost wonder if they don't get bonuses when I answer. Because, I mean,
The last 3 years has taught me nothing surprises
nothing
me.
just surprises me either.
Um, it's kind of fascinating to hear that you're getting so many phone calls. Um,
Text messages too,
it really
messages on Instagram, messages on Facebook, messages on True Social, messages on Twitter, and then I recently discovered that I have a whole flood of messages that are in my both of my public emails that I have not had time to go through.
mm,
But one thing that we haven't talked about this afternoon is that I we've been talking about the hate, the hate, the hate, and I really, really want to make clear to everyone that there has been so much support as well. In fact, that's probably why I can have the strength to still be functioning and moving forward with this, because of how much support there actually has been. And as much as it was a curse that it went out so viral and on the mainstream media the way it did, it actually was a blessing, because when this was contained to just being shared and trafficked through the inner groups and the community of the LGBTQ plus, I was receiving like predominantly mostly hate, with a few bits of support sprinkled in. As soon as the story broke on the mainstream media and then hit worldwide, then that's when everything shifted. And I would say that the support has been, between my husband and myself and my daughter, what we're getting, it's definitely 5 to 1. Five
that
five times the support as the hate.
that's interesting, as well. And again, I can relate to that.
For you, it probably took a little longer because people had to realize what was going on with the whole COVID issue and
It
so forth.
was actually very surprising to me. Well, first of all, when we did stay open, it was November of 2020. It was not a very busy news cycle besides what was
Right.
had just happened with the election.
Right.
But a lot of people figured it was one and the same.
Mhm.
I'm a Trumper. I'm a Republicanite.
Right.
I've got to be doing this. And I'm pissed off because my orange Cheeto King didn't get, crowned again or whatever it is.
Right.
Um, that environment allowed our situation to catch on fire. Um, and the local news stations didn't necessarily give us the fair shake. They were interested in their soundbite and
Yes.
here is somebody that's defying, here's somebody that's breaking the law, or whatever they happen to put on it. And I'm sure some of the local media has probably done the same with you. Part of it's the format. Part of it is our attention span
Right.
to consume these
Yeah.
things. And when it is like that, you get that one little snippet, and I think that is what they then take and reiterate over and over and over and over again till there is this screaming from the mountaintops of what a bigot you are.
Yeah.
without ever actually even wanting to try and have a conversation or understand, because you're such a bigot and you're such a well da da da, and I'm probably going to get shit on for giving you a platform or whatever it is. And I told you I don't care.
Right.
I'm a small business owner. I have been attacked on Yelp reviews, on Google reviews, and all kinds. I owned a coffee shop down the road that got attacked as well online. That is what angry, discontent people do. When you say that it's their job, I think a lot of them, whether it actually is or not, and I do think that there is some of that.
I do too. I do, but like
I
I
have
said,
no
I know
proof of that.
neither do I, and I know that there are people that are legitimately acting on their own accord just because of principle that they have. But those people that I would think if there were more of them, I would be getting calls 24 hours a
Yeah,
day.
yeah, and especially since it is, no kidding, around the stories around the world.
Mhm.
It's hard to deny that. So different time zones,
Exactly.
so
That's why I can't believe that my phone is
I'm
going as
I'm
it
not
does.
surprised. There are a lot of entities out there that are pushing some of these narratives. Again, we're seeing some of the trans stuff happen in our communities up here, up north, and I am imploring everybody to start having these
Yeah.
conversations. They're tough. They're difficult. It's just like masks and your family and vaccines and all
Yeah.
this stuff. Nobody really wants to talk about it, but people are so emotional that we've got to ratchet it down and have a conversation and understand that Christine has a set of beliefs. I have a set of beliefs. They're not always going to align. Maybe one or two, or maybe half a dozen, or maybe all of them.
But just understanding that you have those beliefs, it does keep us grounded
Yes.
because it keeps us from believing that everyone in the world is just like us.
Right.
And that's okay because we should realize that we are all individuals and that we all are unique in some sort of way and we're not going to agree on everything. We have
And
to learn to live and exist that way.
and to that point, what a scary friggin' world it would be in if we all thought the same. If
Oh
we
yeah.
all had the same idea, if it was just marching orders that we were just, I mean, that truly is a
Because then
really
you don't
scary world.
know who you don't know who you can trust.
Right.
There's no authenticity. There's no you can't form you can't really get to know someone if you don't know who they are.
Right. And I think, when you mentioned before about, we never used to talk about politics and what happens in the bedroom and sexual, some of that stuff um, has come out. And it is such a main discussing topic when people get together, that all it does is just divide.
Yes.
And I hope that what we're talking about today, maybe somebody will listen to what you're saying and say, she's not the bigot I thought she was. I still don't necessarily agree with her comments, but maybe it was a little bit over the top for me to assume that this person is evil, or that this person should be killed or run over. I can only imagine the shitty things that,
Yeah.
you know, I once said, somebody had said, well, I hope you get COVID. It was a Facebook profile picture of me and my nephew from Christmas.
Uh-huh.
And somebody says, well, it sure would be a shame if your nephew got COVID. I had somebody the other day, just the other day, we're just going on almost 3 years now. Somebody is claiming that their grandmother died because they ate at the Iron Pig during COVID or something like that. I used to joke that, you'd think I was performing um, abortions in the street.
Right.
Well, now we know that
Right.
that might be applauded, but
Right.
um, I'm not out there dragging grandma and grandpa off the sidewalk to come in. I'm merely offering the option, right? And I think that's, at the end of the day, really what you're saying is there are plenty of other options
There's 800 licensed
for
stylists in Grand Traverse County alone.
800.
There's over
Wow.
800.
So there clearly are
There's
plenty of other options.
plenty of options.
This is also, I come from a free market standpoint.
Mhm.
If I decide that I'm going to have a certain kind of barbecue in my restaurant. We do Southern barbecue, low and slow. If I decided I was going to do something, that's going to push part of my audience away. You're simply standing on a principle and of taking a position and just saying these folks are welcome to go somewhere else.
Yes.
You've not denied service to anybody. No harm has come from anything. You've not committed any crime. But here you are embroiled in this controversy over words. And nobody wants to talk about the words that you're saying and the reason why you're saying them. It's all just, you're a bigot, you're all of these nasty words. And from everything I can tell, you're not. Now, again, I don't know you
Right.
that well, but I can tell a reasonable person
Right.
is sitting next to me having a conversation that holds certain beliefs. And it is wildly disappointing that too many people cannot have an adult conversation around this. And I think I know why. And part of it's because of some of the illogical discussion that comes around some of these other letters.
Mhm.
And again, I don't care. I don't care if you identify as a tree. What level are you going to require me to participate in that? That's my real question. Um, I do have a little bit of an issue with um, parents and um, trans children. I worry about. I've seen a lot of statistics about um, single mothers with trans children, the single moms. I think Gallup came out with this maybe less than a month ago. 60% are single moms suffering from depression, have had some kind of trauma in their life, and also suffer from, I believe they claimed it as multiple personality disorder. Um, that is the conversation I want to bring out of all of this trans discussion that's happening, whether it's the school board or whether a Bud Light commercial or whether a shop owner in Traverse City has made controversial comments on Facebook. I would like to bring about the conversation about how this has come about and where it's really coming from. And we don't know all of the outcomes yet, but
No.
we do see a fair amount of the outcomes from transitioning
Yes.
children. Again, whatever you think about it, I'm not trying to say yay or nay. I think we need to have a discussion about how we get there. I
Well, like,
know,
yeah, like talking about the suicide rates,
yeah,
and it's not just the suicide rates, it's the successful versus the unsuccessful. I mean, those numbers
yeah,
are staggering.
yeah,
So we're doing something wrong. We need
yeah,
to go back to the drawing table and say, okay, are we exposing people to this too young? Are they not able to handle it yet? I mean, I've had clients tell me that they have children, that adult children, one that had a daughter that had a very difficult pregnancy. It was recommended that she no longer have any future children because her body may not be able to handle doing that. But she couldn't get her tubes tied because she was only 21 years old.
wow,
And then, another person told me that their son had to wait until he was 24 or 26. I can't, it was 24 or 26 before he could get a vasectomy. Well, why is it such a problem? I mean, these people, individuals are very close to the end of the like
mhm,
maturing threshold. And as we said earlier, some people mature at a different rate than
right,
others. So it's very possible that 21-year-old or that 24-year-old is very like, grown up enough and has a developed mind enough to make this decision for themselves. But yet we make them go through all of these kind of hoops. And then we're going to allow children that are, quite young to start hormones and all of these other
right,
things with their health. So why do we have this double standard is what, people should be asking.
hmm,
And it's just because the pendulum seems to sway in the way that you want it to doesn't make it right.
doesn't make it right. Yeah, that is a good point. Um, it is a such an emotionally charged topic to try and wrap your hands around, especially when one soundbite or three or four words taken out,
Yeah.
completely out of context or not understood um, gives a party ammunition to divert the conversation away from what it is that you, in this particular instance, are trying to bring about. Um, Now, the real question is, will any of this be effective in moving this conversation down the line? Um, I I would have to say yes, but it remains to be seen
Right.
as more people understand where it is that you're coming from, and hopefully understand, I guess I should say. And there are going to be plenty of people that it won't matter,
Right.
right? Just like
Exactly.
COVID stuff now.
I mean, we still see
Um,
people driving around with masks on and they're
every
in the
day,
car by themselves.
every day. Firmly held beliefs that they cannot let go of for fear of what it
Means.
means,
Yeah.
or what they're actually capitulating to. 2.5 years of being locked down or wearing a mask or a forced vaccine, or I couldn't see, one of my parents before they passed away, or I couldn't have everybody at a funeral. Crazy things that we did as a society, not necessarily myself, because I didn't do any of that bullshit.
Neither did I.
But plenty of people did, and they're afraid that if they admit that masks don't work or the vaccine, didn't do what they promised it did, whatever it happens to be, um, they feel like, and I know this for a fact, I've had conversations with people about it, they cannot admit that those particular things, or that there are issues with the trans community, and how children may or may not be transitioning, access to such things, adults coming into uh, early learning environments like we have here in Gaylord, and some of the parents being very frustrated about that whole hiring process and kind of being kept in the dark. It's going to be a difficult path forward, but I hope that reasonable people, I want to keep using that word,
Mhm.
um, cooler heads will prevail. Some of us will sit around and have adult conversations with people that aren't trying to shout each other down. Those of us that have been around for a while, that took debate class in high school, which I'm not even sure even exists anymore, we were taught how to send and receive differing information, different points of view. And you had to accept that and try and formulate an argument based on your beliefs and have that conversation with somebody. It's a lost art. It should have never been an art to begin with, but it is a lost art.
It is.
And I don't know. I mean, you and I sitting here discussing this may or may not have any impact whatsoever. I know you're getting ready to go on some real media outlets.
But I don't
Um,
really, but I consider this is where we need to shift the public perception.
I agree.
This is real media
I agree.
because this is allowing somebody to express the full picture, and it's not. I mean, yes, there's some editing that has to take place, but there's a lot of times that we have an opportunity to tune into this alternative media
Right.
platforms where it's not edited at all and it's just straight live. But the what we see on television, that is not real.
Right.
That is what they
100%.
have edited, and they have created a narrative, and they've created a brand or a story for you. There's a reason they call it news stories.
Yeah. It's a thing that's going to have to be unwound over time. People are so indoctrinated
Yeah.
to their media source. Um, I don't know if I've read an article, and I cannot cite it, but it was a discussion about um, independent content creators, like some of us out there, that have, I've got friends that have moved out of mainstream media, that have gone into creating their own content and become wildly successful at it, breaking away from a newsroom where you have downward pressure to
Hmm.
create a certain narrative.
Yep.
That's why the news channels never once talked about my court wins. So we
Exactly.
failed our way to
Yeah.
the top, and the last one we got was the big win.
Right.
And none of them had any interest in actually telling the story about the Iron Pig winning. It was a it wasn't furthering their narrative of how
Exactly.
bad we were.
Exactly.
So I equate this time that we're living in right now with independent content creators like the printing press
Hmm.
and mass media, if you will, that was created by the printing press, taking one thing and being able to copy it out there for more than just a couple of people to
Yeah.
read. That's where we're at, I think, in media. And I'm new to this space. Um, I don't pretend to have any of it figured out. I get picked on all the time for my lighting and my sound, and I don't really care.
You're
It's
not
it's
trying,
it's the content
exactly,
I'm
it's the
I'm more
content.
concerned about.
And that's the problem with the mainstream media is they're so concerned about the flashiness and
Hmm.
the having the cookie cutter like duplicatable. It's the same on every channel. And it's people, and that's what people get conditioned with.
Right.
When you're trying to condition people and brainwash people, you have to have consistency.
Yeah.
And that's why the people that are more likely to discover these alternative platforms, they're waking up in droves because there's not a consistency
Mhm.
with this. And people see different formats, they different styles, and they start to become able to look past the lighting, look past the
Mhm.
flashiness, and really hear what is being said. And a lot of these formats or these programs, they are they're showing up with facts. They're showing up with where to find this. This is where I found it. And we're not telling people how to interpret it. We're just letting you know where to find
Right.
what you need in order to get the right information so that you can make your decision and then be able to have conversations like this.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest part of it is not editorializing things. I hope I don't. I draw back on my personal experiences. When with relating to you, um, th- that's that's what I hope to do is somehow show that when one person stands up, another person sees that. And I'm certainly not suggesting that just because we stayed open that you decided to do this. I'm not saying that, but
But no, it does. It
maybe
does.
somebody
It
will see
empowers
that,
you. It
see you.
empowers you. I mean, your story and stories like yours and seeing other people take a stand, it does. You start to you then you it take you sometimes you have to sit back on the sidelines a little bit until there's something that happens that is enough of a motivator to get you to get out of your comfort zone
Hmm.
and stand up and say something. And what you were saying before about how they weren't covering your wins. Well, last week there was two demonstrations at our business. The first one was on Wednesday, and they had a nice turnout. I mean, I respect if I was participating in a demonstration, I would have been pleased to be participating in something that had that type of turnout,
Sure.
especially with such short notice. I think that there were estimates that was like 75 to 80 people, and I did see some pictures and some clips on the media that would support that. But the ironic part was that I was criticized for sharing on Twitter an image that had been sent to us by somebody that my husband and I had to be in an event Saturday, so we were not anywhere near the business when the second demonstration was taking place. Now, the second demonstration, they actually hyped it up even more on TikTok and some of these other platforms, and like, there's a Facebook event created, and word had gotten out to the authorities, or the authorities actually were aware of both demonstrations before they happened. But on Saturday, 5 people showed up, 5. And we have a picture of it, and I shared it on Twitter. And I got backlash because they were saying to me, well, you're showing the 5 from today, but what about the other day? And I simply responded and said, I didn't need to share the information about the other day because the media covered it. They covered it. So why would I then need to then cover it again? What I needed to show was the balance
Yeah.
that this is what happened on the first demonstration. This is what happened on the second demonstration. Why it was different, I'm not going to try to interpret that. It's for anyone else to decide,
Hmm.
but people should be given the facts. And it really disgusts me that the media chose to not say they could have taken 1 minute on their news and said, hey, there was another demonstration at Studio 8 Hair Lab today, and only 5 people showed up. But they're not going to do that,
Right.
because if they did that, then that helps to end this controversy. And that's the last thing that they want. They are trying to pour gasoline on something and make it go spread like wildfire. They are trying to divide us, when what we really need to be doing is we need to realize who our enemies are.
Hmm.
It is the media and it is the government. And we need to band together. We need to put our differences aside on these little petty things,
Yep.
and we need to band together to get back our freedoms, to pull back our freedoms from the government for all of our sakes.
That is, in a nutshell, exactly our mission. And when I say our, I say mine, our attorney, our fight from the beginning. And we didn't know that we were stepping into this fight.
Yeah,
We
neither
didn't
did
we
I.
didn't realize that the government was using a health law to try and do these things. And we didn't know what the hell this health law was. But as we got down the road, we realized that here was a governor that was using an executive order that was then constitutional. 3 days later, she turned around and used an emergency order from the health department. Never in my wildest dreams, when I got into this business 6 years ago to open the Iron Pig, did I think that the governor would use a health law to limit the gathering of people in my restaurant. Now, extrapolate that out. What's happened now as we sit here is there are now two laws that have been ruled unconstitutional. And those laws were laws that gave people power. And they are fighting tooth and nail to keep that power.
Mhm.
And you have to wonder why.
Right.
Because there's still another mechanism for our government to use in emergencies. And I'm not trying to divert, but the point is, I never thought that by keeping my restaurant open in November of 2020, that I would now sit in a position to radically change administrative law in the state of Michigan. I can't I can't tell you. I want to say it so bad, but we've got a new lawsuit that's coming out, and fundamentally, it will change the way our legislature creates laws, and it will fundamentally change the way administrative law is administered. Um, these are agencies that are executive branch that have police powers, and they now have lawmaking power. That's what happened with the
Yes.
EPGA. That's what happened with the health department.
CDC.
That's what happened with the CDC. That's what happened with the EPA, DHHS, or
Yeah.
Homeland Security
Oh, yeah.
with Mayorkas. They just
Yeah.
had a ruling a couple weeks ago. All of these, Justice Gorsuch from the Supreme Court, by the way, is all over this topic. Um, and he recognizes that what we call here at Fuelcast the fourth branch of government, which is the administrative state.
Mhm.
Our new action that I really want to tell you about, but I can't, is going to focus on that specifically, and it will create that you can't see it on camera, but over here on the whiteboard, there's the three separate but equal branches of government, and that is where we have gone wrong
Oh, yes.
when we talk about liberty in fuel. That is where everything has gone wrong, is the legislature has given too much power to the executive branch,
Mhm.
and they need to take it back.
Well, and just how many
And that's your
Americans.
fear with this law, right?
Exactly, exactly. Where does it end, and how far do we let them encroach? I mean, I remember flying when you didn't have to take your shoes off.
Right.
I mean, we give a little, we give a little, we never get it back.
Never.
When they were able to stop using the yellow or the red or the orange, status of our safety with
Right.
and security and flying and travel and so forth, we got back to the good, the safe zone. Do you remember getting any of our rights back?
No.
Neither do I.
No.
And it's sad because you talk to people out in the community of all different ages, and it's amazing at how many people don't remember those three branches.
Yeah, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it seems like a lot of them are coming true these days.
Yeah, we need more
But
conspiracies.
I would argue that may be by design.
Mhm.
A dumb populace, if you will,
Mhm.
makes it much easier to
To
steamroll.
control. Yeah, oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, and that's what we've seen. I mean, with the lockdowns in 2020, there was immediate capitulation. Um, by almost everybody.
Yeah.
And hindsight certainly is 2020, and we know a lot more than we did now. And we shut down the first go
Yeah.
around. We didn't know. But
And as did
but
I.
then but then we
Yeah.
started to know, and some of us that made some informed decisions. And I will tell you, there was a couple of restaurants ahead of us that were out there
Mhm.
that stayed open
Yeah.
by about a week that
You
I
kinda
saw,
watch
and I
it.
said, "Damn it, man, these guys are doing it.
I'm doing it.
I'm gonna do it."
Yeah.
And a big dog came out, guy named Joe Vicario, who owns several restaurants in the Detroit area, came out and said, "Listen, don't give in." And about 4 days later, he gave in, and I
That's
was like,
hard to see.
"Damn!"
That's hard.
Because
That's
he's a
hard to
big
see.
name in
Yeah,
the restaurant industry in
absolutely. So then
Michigan.
you're thinking to yourself, "Here I am, just a little guy."
He must know something that we don't.
Exactly, yeah.
So there is that, and I will applaud you for standing up for your principles.
But I wanna open people's eyes,
And I
you
think
know.
that is an even more noble cause, if I can use that word. And again, a lot of people are probably going to hate me and disagree with that, but you have to understand that here sits a person that is daring to go against a wildly populist narrative right now. Um, and to be able to stand in that line of fire of insults and a barrage of negativity, you you willingly took that on,
Absolutely,
right? Which is why I say
absolutely.
I'm not going
I
to
mean,
make you a
y
victim, but
no, and I was so offended on Twitter when one of the, extreme Michigan or something groups, I had put
on
out some
Twitter,
yeah, I put out some sort of statement or something, and they twisted it, and they said, "Christine Geiger now considers herself a victim," and I immediately responded back and said, "I did not use those words. I didn't say it exactly this, but you could find my Twitter if you want to see the post is still up. And I said, I did not use these words. I said, you said that you did, and remember that. Like, I don't consider myself a victim whatsoever. This is, I feel like I grew up my entire life ready to do this.
mhm, interesting.
I was the child growing up. I was the oldest of three. My parents were very young when they had me. And I was the child that always argued everything. I wanted to know why. I questioned. I was a pain in the ass. And I was that way through junior high and high school too. Sometimes even with my teachers, I would
Mhm,
question. I remember our high school history teacher. It was probably our government teacher, to be specific. We were taking government class, and there was a question about is America a corporation? Is the United States of America a
yeah,
corporation? I remember it, and I didn't remember it until about 3 years ago when all of this stuff was happening. And I remember it was just like one of those memories from childhood that comes back like it's crystal clear. And I remember sitting in that classroom, and so many people in our class got that question wrong. And then we argued with him about it. And then and I remember questioning, like, okay, well, if this is the case, then why are we allowing this? Like, this isn't what our forefathers intended. And
right.
so that really, and I think at that time, it was the wrong climate in this world to have these discussions because nobody was brave yet about
Mhm,
this. But I had passion about it and I was fired up. And I remember being like, having someone basically like try to put the lid on me and cancel my voice, and that then in turn led to a lot of voice canceling, and I started to become not who I was meant to be, and I started just rolling with it. Well, if I can't fix it, then I might as well just like ignore it.
mhm,
And I couldn't stand how unjust and the things I was seeing in society were, but I was so young that I had no voice to be able to fix it. It's not like today's world where we had TikTok and
right.
I could have been out speaking my truth and had a few people be like, she might be young, but she's got a point. There was none of that back then. And so it's very frustrating to see that we do have that now, and that more and more people of our generation are embracing that we finally have a voice, we finally have a platform. We don't have to be quiet anymore.
Right. And it's okay
It is
to
okay.
speak up. It's okay to question.
Yes.
It's okay to there are processes by which, see, that's, people have come after me for what we did, and I said, listen, this is due process. People are still mad at me, right? And I say, listen, don't be mad at me. Be mad at this judge. Be mad at that judge.
Yes.
Be mad at due process, because that's what we used.
Yeah.
That's what was afforded to me and to us to be able to use that. Now you're not in this situation because you haven't done anything wrong.
But it might be.
And it will be interesting to see how Dana Nessel or whomever from Traverse City finds some loophole or some
Or they
word that
create
they can
something,
expand,
because
or they create something.
apparently over the weekend I received a news notification from some media app that was saying that there has been reports now that the city has reports in order that they will be investigating. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I mean, they could have knocked on my door this afternoon when I wasn't there. I'll have to let you know if that happens. Um, but part of the problem, going back to like the trans situation, is like you were saying, be mad at the judges, be mad at the whatnot. Well, we need to be upset with the health professionals and the doctor, the medical professionals, and some of these other institutions. Apparently with the mental health situation, when a counselor is working with a young person, they are only allowed to diagnose one thing, and that is according to a speech that I listened to that Tim Ballard did recently. He did
Okay.
that in Utah. I can share it with you. It's only 19 minutes. It actually gives you a lot of hope in this world that there is a power greater than ourselves that is definitely playing a hand in some of the miracles that we're seeing. And that's another thing. We don't always hear about enough miracles. You
Yeah.
turn on the nightly news, and all you hear about is the war in Iraq or this or that, or people are dying and all that. But you know what? There's a lot of miracles that are happening every single day. And he talks about how we have a situation where these youngsters, these counselors are only able to diagnose them with one thing. And so the trendy thing is, or the thing that they're being pressured to diagnose them with, is this gender dysphoria, or
Mhm.
the wanting to transition and be if they're a girl, then they're trying to, then they would be happier, or they're having problems because they really want to be a boy. But what this really could be coming down to is maybe they are just simply having body dysmorphia issues because they are not able to process and handle the changes that are happening with their body because of puberty. Just little things like that.
Mhm.
The pressure that they're getting from society, the peer pressure at school. But unfortunately, it seems like the counseling sector, it just takes this situation. If they see one little thing, one little snippet of something, then they take the ball and run with it. And now that person is going to be counseled into possibly, changing their sex gender.
There is an alarming rate of um, depression. One of the things that I am just starting to look into as SSRIs
Hmm.
being given to the kids at
Yeah.
alarming
Oh,
rates.
it is for things that just are that
Yeah,
you are just appalled. Like, you think to yourself, I went to school with kids like that, and we treated them just like everyone else.
I think, and this is just my opinion. Hate me if you want, but I think the two biggest failings with regards to what's happening with some of these kids, and it's not even trans kids I'm even necessarily speaking of, but um, our medical establishment has let us down.
Yes.
I think there is a really weird move towards normalizing a lot of this. I think there is some sketchy research coming out about uh, some of the drugs that are being used, medical castration. I think some of the long term mental health issues for transitioning children, uh, I think, is not fully out there, or is not fully being told. I just think there's a lot of questions. And again, I think that our medical establishment and then our counseling establishment, right, because they follow medical guidelines,
Yes.
right? I'm assuming, I'm not a counselor.
Yeah, we don't know. We're not.
I saw a counselor once when I was in third grade. My parents got divorced. I'm still here. So I don't. There's an important role for those people to play, right? The counselors. They're such an important part, especially these days. The other part of it is I'll put the onus on the parents.
Yeah.
I'm mid 40, and some of these kids that are growing up now are friggin' brats,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
I interview them frequently. They're just We just had Alpenfest here
Mm.
downtown. 5 days of festival. Some of it's wonderful, some of it's not. Um, but you get to see a wonderful cross section of our northern Michigan community, and there just seems like there are more brats screaming and running around now more than ever.
Mm.
And the easiest way I put it is, parents are just afraid to say no.
Yeah,
They want to.
absolutely.
Bill Maher actually did some great jokes about this in his last special on HBO, where he's like, "When did it become negotiations with kids? Like, hey, little buddy, you want to go to bed now?" And it's like,
Exactly.
"No, you're going to bed." And I think that extrapolated out on a greater scale, the inability for a parent to be a parent and would rather be a friend to their child, I think is a big deal. And
It
when
is a
when
big
you when
deal.
you pull in the statistics about um, single mothers and the high rates of depression, and the other things I mentioned before, they're all correlated. They're
Oh, it
all
all
part
plays.
of the whole thing, and that I think also makes it so difficult to have these conversations because it is so many different facets, and nobody wants to demonize anybody for attempting to do the best thing that they think as a parent for their child or for themselves,
Right,
right? Because
right.
we have an adult man that identifies as a woman that has now been charged with being a paraprofessional in our kindergarten here in Gaylord. Um, Again, I don't have kids in our school system. Um, I do fund the school system locally. I have attended a few of the school board meetings, but this whole story was brought to me. I don't regularly attend school board meetings. It was brought to my attention by parents,
Yeah.
and the parents
Like
said,
parents coming into the restaurant and
parents
so
said,
forth.
messaging me,
Oh,
did you hear what Gaylord Schools did? I was like, I don't follow the Gaylord Schools. I know we had some new school board members change hands because they instituted a mask mandate policy the August of 2021, and an ensuing lawsuit happened. Um, but there is a real trend towards having these discussions. I hope they happen in a calm environment. They did not necessarily at one of our last school board meetings. But the point I was going to make previously was that with regards to our teacher here in our parapro here in Gaylord, and I don't know Misha. She could be a wonderful person. I don't know.
yeah.
Um, and I don't. That's not necessarily the point. A lot of the parents in this particular situation expressed to me that the early learning environment was what made them uncomfortable. They would probably be okay in the high school
Yeah.
where that development has moved along a little bit and can understand
There's not such an influence.
gender dysphoria and
Yes.
can understand what Misha may be going through, and importantly, react appropriately. That's part of the thing that we need to have these conversations is, regardless of how you feel about somebody that identifies the opposite gender that they do, some people really do take offense and are really hurt by being misgendered. I don't think it comes to a point where it's a crime. I think it is kind of a matter of being an asshole or not. If somebody says, I'm not Michael, I'm Misha, I prefer to be,
Hmm.
but if you continue to do it after they've expressed an
Then that is
interest,
a different
then
story.
that's
Yeah.
that absolutely is just being
When you don't
rude.
know,
And
you don't know. But
yeah,
once you know, then
but my point is that when we have more of these students and we have more of these administrators and or teachers, paraprofessionals, employees of the school district, the students, but more importantly, the teachers and administrators themselves need to know how to handle that situation, especially for coming into an environment with the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act, where somebody could potentially see some things as discrimination.
yeah.
Um, in my mind, I have no proof of this, but in my mind, that could be why the school board has hired this individual up here We're very conservative. Traverse City is a little bit different. We're a pretty conservative um, region of the state.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit out of the norm for our community. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't push those bounds, but let's have some conversations,
Right.
and let's not have the rhetoric that you've seen. One of our school board meetings, we had uh, teachers crying and admonishing the school board, the duly elected school board members, for opposing the hiring of this person. And it had nothing to do with their sexual orientation or their gender identity. It had to do more with, I think, that this person may not be right for the position as far as maybe qualifications or
Right.
something
Yeah.
like that. Um,
And that comes down to another issue that we're facing in this country. We've stopped hiring people based on their credentials and their skill set. We're hiring them based on checking off boxes.
And maybe with the affirmative action ruling that came down from SCOTUS last week, maybe we'll start to see
Yeah.
some of that change. But I think a lot of that indoctrination runs pretty
Really
deep.
deep, yeah.
And again, while well intended, I think I know I've seen the statistics now are proving the opposite, for what that particular law
Yeah,
had
I mean,
intended.
nobody wants to go under the knife with the person at the bottom of the class.
Right.
Nobody wants to get on the airplane with the pilot that barely passed,
Right.
just because they happen to check a box on some sort of like, form as
This
far as
is
balance.
where that make logic great again
Exactly.
comes into play for me, and let's have a logical debate, about things like gender and sports,
Mhm.
gender and bathrooms, and some of these things. These are impacting women
They're
way
canceling women.
disproportionately.
They're canceling
Yeah,
women. They gave us all of these rights, and then all of a sudden now they're
dudes are
they're
taking it
they're,
away.
they put men in positions where they can take it away from us again. I mean, the Miss Amer or the the pageant that just took place.
Oh, is it the Netherlands?
Yes, in the
Yes.
Netherlands. I mean, that all of the other competitors that were female, they have worked their entire for many years to get to this level, and unfortunately, they didn't take a stand and say we're not participating. If they would have simply just got banded together and said we are not going to participate in this pageant unless you give him his own pageant,
Right.
like give them their own pageant,
Yeah.
but do not come over here and try to take away ours.
It's definitely an interesting time to be alive, especially if you love the theater of the absurd.
Yes, the
Anthony
clown show.
Anthony Bourdain said that. I can't take credit for that. But these, Riley Gaines has been on that the forefront of a lot of that. I know she was here in Michigan a few weeks ago. Um, it 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 is just mind-boggling that we even are having these conversations in 2023. How did we get here? Um, yeah, we've kind of briefly discussed that, and now it is incumbent upon us to have the conversations, and maybe not unwind, but definitely change the trajectory of the conversation,
Mhm.
because it really is very one-sided,
Yeah.
by design, as you've seen. I do have a question that just popped into my head, and we were talking about sex. I want to ask you this question. Um, do you think, and you may not have a good answer to this, but
Right.
so if Christine was Chris,
Okay.
do you, and Chris had made the comments that you made on social media, do you think that the backlash would have been the same, more, or less?
Was Chris a biological male
Oh,
or
you can't go there yet.
or
So it's an interesting question, in and of itself, just straight gender, a biological straight male that might have said this. Um, I don't really know what the answer to that is.
my heart, my gut tells me, my intuition tells me that in this climate where we're at this moment, I don't think that it would have mattered. Okay, for example, my husband Kevin, he is my partner in the business. So had Kevin made this statement and let's say Kevin was also a hairstylist, because a lot of husband wives or
Hmm.
partners are both
My
hairstylists.
wife and I, yeah,
Um,
not hairstyle.
right, but you do the same,
Yeah.
yeah. If Kevin would have put out that statement, I think the backlash would be just as bad. I mean, they may not go up against him with such I don't know though, because I've seen some comments that were directed at him that were
Hmm.
pretty violent too.
Hmm.
So I really, at this stage of the game, I don't think that it matters. It would be interesting to see if that person had already transitioned
Hmm.
and they made that comment. Like, let's say, for example, what if Caitlyn Jenner made this cut? What if Caitlyn Jenner owned a hair salon
Right.
and Caitlyn Jenner put this out? That's what I think would be interesting to see what the backlash would have been,
Hmm.
because I don't know that it would have been the same. Maybe it would have been, but it also could have been worse, because that whole community could have then turned on her and said, um, you are one of us and you're saying this.
Right.
So
Right.
it opens up a whole nother issue.
I'm fascinated by the whole thing, and people will probably take exception with me saying that, but no harm has come to anybody.
Right.
I keep reiterating that. Words don't hurt unless you put them on a brick. So it will be really interesting to watch where things go from here.
Yes.
Um, how people will react to more of your narrative getting out there. I have a feeling those that are angry with you are really, really angry with you are always going to be that
Oh, for
way. There's no way
absolutely.
that you can talk
I mean,
them
they
down.
laugh. They laugh at Facebook posts that I have on my Facebook that are talking about the sound of freedom and cages.
Yeah.
Those are two very serious topics about human trafficking and abuse of children. So why they
But it,
feel
for
the
it,
need to laugh at that, is that them saying that they don't believe it exists?
it is what that is that is them saying that Christine no longer has a moral authority or a moral high ground to speak on anything. That's part of them. I hate using that word. That's part of why people have come after you so hard to try and discredit you. Not that you have any credibility with regards to child trafficking, but any idea that might perpetuate a moral high ground, they're going to now wipe you out and say,
But
"Ha ha ha,
right.
you don't get to talk about child trafficking because
But
you're so
I
ignorant about
do though.
this."
I actually do get to talk about child trafficking. I'm a victim advocate. And last Thursday, in the midst of all of this, I was down in Grand Rapids with another volunteer, and we were actively trying to rescue a 30-year-old out of the life that she is in. She was adopted from a different country into the United States when she was 5 years old. She remembers her family members that were involved in this, arguing about how much to sell her for.
Hmm.
She was brought to the United States at 5 years old. And from the time she was 6 years old, she has been trafficked and abused the entire time she's lived here.
Wow.
And now, where she currently is at this stage of the game, she's also now addicted to drugs. And some of the drugs that she has been given, they're drugs that don't even show up on a standard 10 panel test.
Wow.
So it's, we worked on Thursday to try to rescue her. And then 24 hours later, she was sitting with some detectives trying to help provide them with information that they need in order to go after this organization or this group that that is responsible for it. And that's pretty much all I can say. I've tried to be as vague as possible to protect everyone's
Sure.
anonymity, but I was on the front lines on Thursday.
That's amazing.
So I do know what's going on with the human trafficking, and it is disgusting that even if they're trying to discredit me or not, what does that say about their humanity?
Right.
And I work with a lady that really makes a good point often. Yes, she makes a good point often, and she's said this to some people that have complained to her about my actions, and they've said some hurtful things. And she says, my grandmother raised me to know that two wrongs don't make a right.
True.
And if you think what I did was so wrong, then why are you retaliating with the same thing?
Yeah.
And this is direct. Mine was a very broad comment. And the hate that I'm receiving is very, very personal and
Yes.
very direct.
Yes.
And I can take it, but it's just ironic.
It's incredibly ironic. It's hypocritical. it's disappointing that adults can't have a little bit more of a an adult conversation about some of the things. But that's why I always say, on emotional topics like this, and the COVID crap, you just have to remove the emotion from it and look at, the logical point of view, or in my case, the logic was the law, which is much firmer to stand on than what you have to articulate as your beliefs that you're standing on,
Right.
or your principles. Um, so I it will be fascinating to see how
It was.
this story keeps in everybody's minds, and how the narrative unfolds moving forward.
Mhm.
Will it end with you just being a bigot, period?
Right.
Or is it going to open up the conversation a little bit more than it already was before? Um, we'll see. I wish you good luck.
Thank you.
It does take people. Again, I'm probably going to get shit for saying good luck and having you here and giving you a platform and all this other stuff, but it's not so much um, really about what you said for me. It's about what is happening, what you have stepped into. Um, the potential legal ramifications. I'm very interested to see how that goes, given the entire environment that we live in Michigan now. And it has a lot to do with stuff that's happening locally here in my community too. Um, and I again, I could virtually care less.
Right.
Um, being a libertarian gives me that opportunity to say, I don't care. You can identify as a couch cushion. I don't care.
Right.
I don't
Right.
care. Um, so I appreciate you coming over here, taking some time to talk, to
Same.
get your side of things out. I hope that we've given you an opportunity to do so. You're always welcome to come back here. Let me know if anything, if they try to bring any kind of legal action, or even threaten legal action, or threaten your license
Mm.
or something like that. Again, my expert tells me that so far there doesn't seem to be anything,
Well, I might need
but
to have a referral for one of your
there,
experts.
there are a lot of really good attorneys out there, constitutional attorneys specifically. Mine is not necessarily, but I'll tell you, he's becoming more and
He's
more
good.
versed in it
Yes.
every day, since we are going after some pretty severe Michigan statutes in the next couple of weeks, which I look forward to telling everybody more about. Um,
Now, is this going to help clean up things?
it will. What it is going to do is it'll show everybody how the executive branch has kind of shuffled the chips from the legislature over into their branch, to create this gigantic. I mean, Whitmer just created another education department the other day, so we have two education. I think she is one agency shy of her constitutional limit on executive agencies.
Oh, wow.
Um, so
She's time
again,
for a full house.
all the power that she can muster.
Yeah.
These silly things like a council to try and get more people to move here or something like that. I have an easy one: don't lock people in their homes for 2 years. That's not like a good one. So it it will be a mechanism for our legislators to use moving forward, and how they take it and run with it will be interesting to see, especially the political dynamic that we have in Michigan. But Michigan law is Michigan law, and they'll have to follow whatever comes down the pipe from there.
Absolutely.
So we'll see. But I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate your openness. Yeah. Any parting comments?
No, I think we talked about a lot.
Good. We did. Again, I appreciate you taking the time. Appreciate
Same
you,
for you
everybody.
too.
Yeah, of course. I know these are not easy things to talk about, especially, I know you are going to be doing some other media stuff as well. There is always the potential of putting yourself in the position of saying something that can be used against you in a court of law. I had nearly all of my business and personal. I had somebody screenshotting my personal, so wasn't public. I had a friend of mine sending screenshots of my personal how we're going to challenge the liquor commission. Oh, it looks
Mhm.
like we're going to stay open. Oh, we're going to do this kind of stuff. It was used against me. Um, but the one thing they couldn't use against me, what there was never COVID in my restaurant. There was never contact tracing here in the restaurant. They had to admit that
That's
in
amazing.
court. And I'm admitting it again on the air now. So it's, uh, anyways, Christine, thank you
Thank you.
so
Thank you
much
very much.
for taking the time. Christine Geiger. So actually, before we go, people had messaged me a little bit before. Um, Anybody that is looking to support Studio 8 or looking to support you, I've had a couple of people say that they want to pre-purchase haircuts from you.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Um, for speaking out and taking a stand that many people don't like, but that's sort of why they want to support you
Um,
in your endeavor.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I may have to increase the number of hours that I'm working a week to accommodate get new clients that I think I would also enjoy supporting them as well. But I mean, the reality is I'm only one person, and I have had a few hairstylists that have reached out to me that have similar beliefs. They may not have spoke them the same way that I did, but they are a little bit more conservative hairstylists, and so I'm going to be working on putting a list together of referrals alternate to my business as well, so that people can just support all of us
Mm,
that are taking a stand. And everyone takes a stand a little bit different. Not everyone has to take a stand as publicly as I did.
yeah.
So, I would say that we will be putting together some referrals as well. We did a friend of ours had started the GoFundMe, or I'm sorry, Give Send Go campaign only to have something in place because there are a lot of people that are concerned that I may need to retain formal legal counsel.
Hmm.
Um, so I can give you that information as well. It's on Give Send Go. Someone can just type in my name. I think she titled it Stand with the Stylist.
stand
Stand
with the
with the Stylist.
stand with the stylist. Okay.
Or they can type in my name, but those would be the best ways. And then as far as like appointments go, we will be putting together the online booking system, which is already up and running, but right now we have it disabled just
Mm,
because of everything that was going on.
sure.
And we just have to take a couple precautions. I spoke with some people yesterday to find out what the best way to kind of set this up so that I can protect myself too. Because I do, as many people as want to come and support me,
Mhm.
there's also people out there that want to come in and try to like set me up or
Right.
something. So
Yeah.
I have to put things in place for the business to protect myself and the business from that happening. So I would say by the end of the week, we will be able to release some sort of method of getting an appointment with either myself or another stylist in my area that also has taken this stand as well, just not as publicly and maybe not the same way.
Is there the activity on your Facebook page? Are you posting anything there? Are you staying away from that for a minute?
I'm posting a little bit here and there on my personal Facebook page. I have not really posted on the salon Facebook page. I just actually reactivated or made it public again yesterday. I needed a break for a while.
Sure.
With this many social platforms, I was getting inundated from
Indeed.
all angles, and I just needed some things to be on pause for a few days just to be able to kind of weed through this and figure out how to move forward. So yeah,
Interesting.
but I'm
I
posting on Twitter
Twitter
Truth Social.
Twitter's a good place to be. Even more so now since Elon has
Yes, he has
taken
made some
control.
good changes.
I am engaged on Twitter, specifically with a lot of our senators, state representatives, a lot of people that are just tweeting bullshit
Hmm.
nonstop.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, Elliot Larson stuff, the stuff about the "Don't Misgender Me" bill, a lot of that stuff. Twitter is a great platform for me to have one-on-one with
Yeah.
anybody, and
Oh yeah.
people come after me all the time. And I've spent hours just messing with people because they're extremely fragile. And I wouldn't say that it is a form of entertainment for me, but some people are so ridiculous
Yes.
that it is almost entertainment.
Almost, yeah.
So stick to it.
Thank you.
Don't let the haters get you down. Stick to your principles. Good luck with the mainstream media
Thank
interviews.
you.
I'm
I hope to
sure that
only have the one. And then stick to the more alternative platforms
there's
where
I'll send this out to some friends too, and they'll I'm sure they'll reach out to you as well.
okay.
You have a fascinating story. You're stepping into it in a fascinating uh, time in history. Maybe the adjective absurd could be used with that too, with a lot of these things. I'm not just talking about the trans stuff, but
Right.
COVID
Yeah.
has just changed our world.
They that was their one shot done,
Yeah,
because next time that they try to pull this nonsense, I don't think that they will have the compliance that they had the first time around. So,
I I hope you are correct.
I know
I
it.
hope you are correct. Um,
Because those of us that played along in the beginning because we were giving them the benefit of the doubt, I don't see us doing that in
right.
the future.
No,
So if
that's why I
nothing
couldn't do
else,
it the second
if
time.
nothing else, they won't have our compliance.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's essentially, I mean, that was what this country was founded on.
Yeah.
I always make the joke that I know we're going forever long, but
Well, you can
I always make the joke that you know, the Boston Tea Party,
yeah.
you know, pennies of tax on tea, and started that entire thing. I'm certainly not saying, you know, the Tea Party, you know, whatever, but I think that there is going to be a tipping point that people are just going to be fed up with
Yeah,
the tea tax, if you will,
absolutely.
and something is going to happen. I don't know if this could be a turning point for this conversation with these issues or not, but maybe it is,
Yeah.
and it's not going to hurt. Again, you haven't hurt anybody, just some feels, as I like to
Yes.
say.
Yeah.
And some people may have a legitimate reason to be upset, but at the end of the day, that's for them to deal with.
Yeah.
And there's no reason that it needs to criminalize somebody else for some words. So we've gone long enough.
Mhm.
I've got some stuff to do. She's
Yeah.
got stuff to do. I got to go make some barbecue. Thank you guys for tuning in to Fuelcast TV, where we're always talking about things revolving around freedom, unity, entertainment, as always, and liberty. So, for my guest, Christine, I'm Ian Murphy. Thank you guys for tuning in. Twitter Space, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you later.
Bye.